Hello and welcome everyone to our Transportation Technology and Policy Graduate Program Virtual Open House. This is the first time we've done this, so welcome. I'm Anne-Marie Schaff and I'm the grad program coordinator for this program. And learning more about ITS Davis and our graduate program. We consider ourselves the international leader in sustainable transportation. And hopefully, if you join our program, you will be part of that as well. So we have a packed agenda for today, and my task is to try to keep us on task and hold it to an hour. So we'll jump right in. I first want to acknowledge all of you that are logging in as prospective students. We welcome you, and we welcome you from all over the world. The international response is amazing, and I know it may be the middle of the night where you are, so thank you for staying up and joining us today. This is our agenda. We have Professor Dan Sperling, Susan Handy, and then we have three folks to talk about research that we do here. These are just three examples. We do a lot more research here. Dr. Giltel will talk about the admissions process, and then we have our current student representative, Amy Lee, will speak. And then we'll have a question and answer period for all of the prospective students to ask all of these folks questions. And then because we had such a big reply, at the end, we're gonna go into 3 different breakout rooms. And our current students, several of our current students will host each of the breakout rooms where prospective students can talk directly with our current students. So first off is Professor Dan Sperling.
Well, let me welcome you all. I'm just so delighted to see so many of you. I just want to say, 2 or 3 short things. One is this is the most exciting, best time to study transportation ever. And I've been around a while, so I can, at least in a long time. Number 2 is and the reason why it's so exciting, such a good time, is so much is happening. Just starting 10 years ago, we have all these new technologies. We've got electric vehicles. We've got these new mobility services, dockless bikes and scooters. And now now there's new policies coming in for decarbonization of transportation. That's getting a top priority. Social justice, environmental justice is getting a top priority. I mean, this is the topic to be studying. And 2, we are really, in terms of technology and policy, that's our name, there is no better place, looking at it from a sustainability perspective. And you're going to hear all about it, all the programs we have on electrification, on shared mobility, on environmental and social justice. So I'm director, I should say. I'm director of the Institute of Transportation Studies, which oversees this grad program. We administer it. And I'm a professor in environmental science and policy and civil engineering. Thanks. Can't wait to meet more of you.
Thanks, Dan. Now, Professor Susan Handy will speak about the program.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. Welcome. Thanks, Dan, for that intro. As Dan said, TTP is a very special program, we believe. It's unique in how interdisciplinary it is. One of the few transportation programs that's not specifically engineering or urban planning. Our faculty come from more than 10 departments across the campus from 3 different colleges. So it's a very interdisciplinary group. We attract students from an even wider array of disciplines. We've had students from all of these different backgrounds that you see here. And as you'll see, if you take a close look at our curriculum, our courses draw from a whole variety of disciplines as well. Next slide. Our goal is to prepare you to contribute to this effort to improve the sustainability of our transportation system. As Dr. Sperling said, it's a really exciting and important moment in transportation. It's a moment in time when we have an opportunity as well as a need to shift the direction of transportation in a more sustainable way. The program is flexible with respect to requirements and programs of study, at the same time that it emphasizes the development of rigorous skills and the core knowledge that you need in the transportation field. Our students get involved in cutting edge research in what we think of much an apprenticeship, excuse me, sort of environment. And you're going to hear from a couple of our researchers about the kind of work that they're doing. And you can find out much more about that also on the ITS Davis website. And all of this research that we're doing here at ITS also creates really interesting and important opportunities for our students to also be engaged with the public agencies that are funding a lot of the research, as well as industry that is funding a lot of our research, and then other partners we have in this enterprise. Next slide. The curriculum is structured this way. We have a set of core classes that you see in the table there. There's a core technology class, a core policy class, and then a data science class. In addition, we have our students for at least the first 2 years, which for master students is pretty much their whole time here, but for PhD students, their first 2 years, they participate in a weekly Friday seminar that's offered by ITS Davis. So those are the core classes. Then you take classes in one of 3 tracks, which I'll explain on the next slide. And then there are also courses you take in skill areas where you go in more depth in something like economics or statistics, and then electives as well. And all of this is outlined on our website, so I'm not going to go into a lot of detail here. But here are the 3 tracks. So there's vehicles and fuels, demand and behavior, and then infrastructure and operations. And cutting across all 3 of these tracks is technology and policy, right? So there's technology that's relevant to each of these tracks, and certainly there's policy relevant to each of these tracks. So after your core classes, you get to pick one of these tracks and take at least 2 courses from one of these tracks. And then of course, you're welcome to take more than that. And we encourage students to take courses across these tracks as well. Next slide. So as I said, you can find out more detail about the curriculum on the website. And also if you have questions, we'll have time to answer some of those. So I just want to end by saying the other thing that's wonderful about our program is where we are, this wonderful setting. So we're housed at the Institute of Transportation Studies, which is, we like to claim, the leading research institute in the world on transportation sustainability. UC Davis is one of the top research universities in the US and in the world for certain fields. We are located within the city of Davis, which is a charming small city of about 65,000 population. That is known as the bicycling capital of the US. We have more bicycling going on here than anywhere else. We are just a few miles away from Sacramento, which is the capital of California, where the most innovative work around sustainability in the US is happening. And then of course, we are just a train ride away from the San Francisco Bay Area and Silicon Valley, which is the world's center of technological innovation. So we have much to offer you within the program and much to offer you around the program as well. And I think we're now turning to some of our researchers so you can hear more about the kind of work that we're doing around here.
Yeah, thanks, Professor Handy. And I'm delighted to see so many people interested in the TTP program. I've had a chance to talk to a few of you, I see. So I'm happy to introduce myself to the rest of you. I'm Jesus Barajas, assistant professor in environmental science and policy. And my research is at those intersections of transportation planning, environmental justice, and social justice that Professor Sperling was talking about at the beginning of the presentation. This is my first year at UC Davis, so I'm ramping up my research program here. But to give you an example of the kind of work that I do, recently wrapped up a report, and I'm doing an extension of that work, looking at travel behavior of affordable housing residents and how developing affordable housing near transit hubs can improve access to the region. I looked specifically at the San Francisco Bay Area and the BART system, the rapid transit system there, in which they had a policy of developing housing at their transit stations, and wanted to understand how that policy would influence ridership on the system, and how that improves or doesn't improve access to jobs and healthcare and other opportunities around the region. We found that that it wasn't a boon for ridership as they hoped it was, largely just because of the expense of the system. Some other work that I've done that's I kind of touch not just transportation, but different domains that touch transportation. So I have a project right now that's looking at sort of the role of policing, the role of traffic enforcement on travel behavior, and how that collides with transportation planning to exacerbate inequities that are inherent in the transportation system. A couple of projects that are coming down the road that I'm working on with folks at ITS and across other UC campuses, that looks at the historical impacts of freeway development on communities of color in California, in Northern and Southern California, and sort of what the lasting impacts of those are. And then trying to imagine transportation scenarios kind of in a post-COVID environment, and sort of how equity plays into that. So that's just a little bit about me. I think there might be a time for maybe a question or two. And if you don't get to those questions, I'm happy to invite folks to talk with me offline afterwards.
If you have a question for Jesus, you can unmute yourself and ask now, or you can put it in the chat. Okay, if you want to follow up with Jesus, his information is on the slide, his contact information. We'll move on, and our next research presenter is Dr. Giovanni Cercelli. And Giovanni, take it away.
Perfect. Thank you, Anne-Marie, and good afternoon, everybody. And it's a pleasure to see so many prospective students interested in our program. Welcome to Davis. It's a wonderful place to work to study for your transportation degree. Hopefully the pandemic will be soon over, and so you will be able to, if you enroll, if you come to Davis, to be in person in our beautiful college town. So my name is Giovanni Cercella. I direct the Three Revolutions Future Mobility Program. The Three Revolutions Future Mobility Program is a rather new program. We've been at UC Davis for only 3 years now, but it's been growing very quickly. And we are interested in a lot of topics related to the impacts of new technologies in transportation. Can we go to the next slide, please? So many of you are familiar already with a lot of shared mobility services. Technologies like car sharing have been already around for a lot of time. In the last few years, we have a lot of on-demand mobility services with our smartphone apps. Cities are getting full of e-scooters, and so micro-mobility options with bike sharing, shared e-scooters, all these opportunities that provide multiple options to move around in cities and give more flexibility of how we travel. And these are really changing the way we travel, the choices that we make today, but also they can affect in the medium term our decisions about whether to own a car or not. Can be actually a solution also for developing countries to solve like the mobility of those that have less access to private vehicles, for example, and can be integrated with other transportation options like public transportation in new packages like mobility as a service and so on. And with the future, with the vehicle automation, things will change further. We will have more and more ability to do things while traveling, but also access a vehicle with robot taxis and move around. So these are all the topics we're interested in our center. Next slide, please. And so in the Third Revolution Future Mobility Program, we are really interested in running a number of activities, including collecting data. We do it in a lot of different settings, analyze data about these changes in behavior and attitudes. We do forecasting models and simulation models to really think about the future of transportation and impacts of new policies, new investments, new services. We do some behavioral experiments, in particular for new services which are not available yet, and so we want to test what are the impacts that the new technologies can bring. And a lot of policy analysis, and also in particular analysis of environmental, economic, and more equity impacts, because there are very important issues associated with equity gaps, those that have access to good services, good ability to move around, but also a lot of other sectors of the society, and also understand what could be the impacts of our policy to mitigate these impacts, for example. Next slide. So we have, if you can give a quick few clicks on this slide, we have data now that we are collecting in North America. Another click, please. In several cities that we are testing now for our COVID-19 related research, in Latin America, in Asia. And so we are getting more and more information about a number of locations, also partnering with other agencies, including the World Resources Institute with research that we do in Asia, Latin America, and Central America, but also another click with our research partners in Europe and Latin America. And we're doing quite a bit of work now related also to the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on transportation. And with this, I will now one more slide, exactly. We have a couple of websites where you can find more information about our work. Our Three Revolutions website, our post-COVID-19 mobility website. I'm very happy to answer questions to you today. We can schedule another time, send me an email, we can talk more. Also, I want to mention we are particularly interested this year in expanding our international activities. And so in particular, students that are fluent in Spanish will definitely have a very high possibility, very high chance to get in our program. We have particular new projects in Latin America that we're launching that we are very interested to recruit graduate students to work on. And then we can also look at other applicants for other projects in the US and elsewhere. I will pause here, happy to answer any questions later or in the breakout rooms after that.
Okay, does anyone have a question for Giovanni right now? Again, you can put it in the chat, or you can raise or unmute yourself and ask it directly. Okay, again, his contact information is at the bottom of this slide, and you're welcome to follow up with him directly. Thanks, Giovanni. Next up, we have Dr. Scott Hardman. And Scott, I will let you take it from here.
Afternoon, everybody, or good evening, depending on where you're from. So I'm Scott Hardman. I'm a professional researcher in the Plug-in Hybrid and Electric Vehicle Research Center. And the center is basically a group of researchers directed by Gil Tell, all focusing on various topics to do with electrification. And I'll just share a little bit about what we do and some sort of high-level research insights and some thoughts about future research. Okay, next slide, please. So a big focus of ours is data collection. We collect data from various sources, sort of acknowledging the fact that in order to understand this big transition, we need to approach it from several different angles. So we survey consumers, we do large online question surveys, we do interviews, workshops, focus groups. We collect data from the vehicles themselves with onboard data loggers. We also get given data from car manufacturers. We get infrastructure data, registration data, and then a lot of this data as well is sort of underpins large modeling efforts that we do. My particular focus is on the consumer studies, so mostly surveying and interviewing electric vehicle owners, and then other researchers in the center work on this sort of larger scale data analysis. And of course, all these data collection efforts, data analysis, writing about the data, it's a lot led by students. So if you were to work with us, you would be working on these kind of projects. So I'm just going to share some research insights. So if you go next slide. So since 2015, we've surveyed about 35,000 EV buyers in California. So that enables us to have a pretty good understanding of what's going on within the electric vehicle market. And this is just sort of one look at that. So this is the different clusters of electric vehicle buyers. And you can see that for the most part, it's high and middle income, high and middle to high income buyers. 50% of the market is high income buyers, and another 45% is middle to high income buyers. And only 5% of the market so far has been what we would consider, a middle income household. And notably, no low income buyers yet, or what we would consider low income buyers. And I think so far this has been fine. It's not been so much of an issue. A lot of transitions start like this, especially with something that's relatively unknown and quite expensive. But sort of moving into the future and in the coming years, we've got to start paying a lot more attention to these 5% of buyers. How do we get more people in middle income households? How do we get more low income households, people in apartment buildings, people in disadvantaged communities? How do we support those people in electrifying or buying an electric vehicle? And that's going to be certainly one focus of us moving forward. Okay, next slide. Something else that we've recently learned is that once someone buys an electric vehicle, it's not a foregone conclusion that they will continue owning an electric vehicle. So we recently surveyed some of those 35,000 EV buyers that we originally surveyed, and we found that 17% of plug-in hybrid buyers and 21% of battery electric vehicle buyers, they have abandoned electric vehicle ownership. They no longer own any electric vehicles. And so obviously the state of California has this goal of selling 100% electric vehicles by 2035. So this sort of is going to make that a little bit more difficult. So understanding why people are abandoning electric vehicles and understanding how we can stop that. That's definitely going to be something that we are interested in understanding more in the future. Okay, next slide. This is just a snapshot of some of our 2020 papers. If you're interested in reading more of our electric vehicle research, you can sort of use this link at the bottom. And in the list of publications, you can sort by the Plug-in Hybrid Electric Vehicle Research Center and just read about all the kind of cool stuff we're doing from myself, others in the center, and also student-led papers. Okay, and I think there's one more slide. So this logos here, this is basically who we work with, a lot of automakers, infrastructure providers, policymakers, foundations, and so on. So I'd say if you're interested in working with us and working with companies like that, feel free to email me and we can talk. And I can also connect you to other, one of the other researchers in our center. Thanks. So thanks for listening.
Thanks, Scott. So we are right on track. This is excellent. Does anyone have any questions for Scott? Again, you're welcome to put it in the chat or to unmute yourself and ask directly. No one? Okay, again, his email address is there. You can follow up with him if you have specific questions. Next up, we have Dr. Gil Tal, who heads up our admissions committee.
Great, thanks, Anne-Marie. So in order not to stay on track, can you go back up one slide back? Professor Handy and Professor Spelling were saying, we are a graduate group and we are hosted at ITS. And I want to kind of just repeat it and show you what does it mean for our students. In many of these, the universities, many researchers can start and finish a dissertation on electric vehicles without seeing one or without talking to anyone who make them or drive them. That's not the case if you're part of the Institute of Transportation Studies. We work in centers and we work together and we engage all the time with a lot of sponsors in the industry. And if you see this slide, and this is the sponsors that directly work with the Electric Vehicle Research Center in 2020. And the top right is federal agencies and state of California agencies, the DOE, the EPA. And then on the top left, we have a lot of car companies that work with us on different topics, on what to make next, who will buy them, how much they will pay, what kind of incentives. When you look down, you see energy companies, both oil, charging, and on the right side, we have Lyft and Ubers and others. And it's not just that it's important, this group of sponsors are sponsoring a lot of the projects that you will work on, but they also give us feedback on our work and changing their policies, changing their activities in the future. So I think that if what you're interested in is coming to school, but also make a dent and change the future, make it a little bit better, I think this is the right place. So now we can start my presentation on admission. So I'm the admission advisor, which means that I have the button that said admit at the end of the process. So I want to talk with you a little bit on the process. Can we go to the next slide, please? And I'm not going to go one by one on the requirement, just to say two things about it. Finish it on time, because we are not reading half applications. If it's not fully done, you don't have your 3 recommendation letters, all the documents are in place, you didn't pay your fee, we cannot read it. It's locked in the system. So finish it on time. The next thing I will say, other than paying and finishing it on time, there was one question here about a GPA of 3.5. We are doing it. I think that the next slide will be a better one for that. Okay, that's the application waivers. We are doing a holistic review. Not one number is kind of like, you know, a killer. If you have a lot of experience, but your numbers, your GPA is a little bit lower, that's okay. That's much more holistic. And this is why we need you to submit it on time, so we can open all of these applications and start reading them. And it's a lot of reading. And you guys, don't worry, if you put a lot of time on preparing this application, we put a lot of time on reading these applications. So be on time, so we can compare all of you together. And if you go to the next slide, I will talk a little bit about the process. So as I said, we read the entire application. We read it for 2 main reasons. First, to see who will be a good fit for our program and will have a good chance to succeed here. And the second is my main job and Anne-Marie's main job in this process is to do the matchmaking, to find the right advisor for each one of you. And then in many cases, there is more than one option. And this is the process that me as admission advisor spend most of the time. I'm only starting it after January 15, when I have all of the, well, except from the students that already works for me as undergrads, but rest of you guys after January 15. And we will try to help you to connect with a potential advisor. It's a must for a PhD candidate. You have to have an advisor say, I'm going to take the student. And it's recommended for a master students, but many times master students can come in and find an advisor or a project later. That's perfectly okay. Now, what I would like you guys to do, I would like you, first you need to put some names in your application. That's a first opportunity to learn who are the potential advisors, and do it by going on our websites, learning about people, doing some search on Google Scholar. But in most cases, you don't need to contact the advisors yet, because they don't have your, even if you send your CV, we will not read it now. We are waiting for January 15 to read your entire application. After we have your entire application, that's a good time to start connecting directly with potential advisor. You can do it directly, or you can shoot an email to Anne-Marie, to myself, and ask for advice. Is that a good potential advisor? Sometimes that will be the best person for you, but this person is on sabbatical next year, or any other thing that you may not know right now. So feel free to check with us. You can also do it directly, and we will try to do this matchmaking and find the best advisor for you. Before you go and talk to the advisor, do your homework. read their recent publications, see what topics they are working on, see how you can match in. You don't need to come up with answers. Questions is where we are in this level. So that's what we will try to do after January 15, do this matching. And once you have a match, you are most likely in our program. Okay, next slide, or just that's my last one. Well, I think that I already said all of that, but we will share the slides with you. So I think that's my main recommendation. Think about admission to graduate school as a match contents of some kind, and that's what we will try to do here. Thank you. Questions?
Thanks, Gil. Again, does anyone have questions for Dr. Tal about the admissions process?
So the same for the GPA for undergrad GPA. There is no one most important thing. I think that UC Davis have some minimum cuts to admit that they are the campus-wide, the UC system-wide. But if you're above that, it's about a holistic review of your application.
I will add one additional comment to the GPA. The university minimum is 3.0 on your undergrad. So you will need a 3.0 on your undergrad to be considered for admission. There's also a question about application fee waivers for international students. Right now, we do not, as a university, offer fee waivers. I do have a meeting next week where we're going to discuss that. But right now, it's not. There are two different types of fee waivers for our students, and that is on our application page. But those are for domestic students. Any other questions? Okay, let's see. Next up, Amy Lee. Amy is our current.
It was the annual fees for PhD question.
Oh, I'm sorry, I missed that.
There's also a question about any tips for writing the essays.
Gil, the annual fees for PhD students. Okay, I will try to put that in the link. Most of our PhD students have that connection with a faculty member and do work as graduate student researchers on their dissertation, most of them, and that employment does cover the California fees and tuition, as well as the non-resident supplemental tuition if you are an international or a non-California domestic student. Let's see, and what was the other question? Oh, I'm going to scroll up. Are there any tips on writing the essays? Yes, again, if you go to our application page and you click on the statement of purpose, or you click on the personal history statement, that will take you to a website giving you tips on that.
If I may jump in, it's been quite a while since I wrote those particular essays, but I still have them, so I just scan them over. And I think that one of the more important things is to write something that you're actively really passionate about. That makes it a lot easier than trying. Sometimes applicants or incoming students I've heard express that they felt like they really tried to figure out, try and game the system and figure out the best way to write the essay that UC Davis most wanted to read. But the essay that the folks in the application most want to read is the essay that really describes what you want to do, why you want to be here, and is really true to you and what you want to do. So that would be my advice.
And that was advice from Peter, a fourth-year PhD student working with the PHEV Center. There was another question about international GPA conversions. Don't worry about it. We do that for you. We have quite a few programs we work with and quite a few experts here on campus that we convert your GPA into a 4-point scale for our admissions committee to review. You do need to upload your unofficial transcript, and we'll just take it from there. Once admitted, then you will need to submit official transcripts to secure that admission. Is it possible to do a PhD program without working at the university, or is that discouraged? Do one of you advisors want to take that one?
It was no, well, now in Corona times, maybe things will change, but in general, it's not recommended. A lot of the education here is this working with other people, meeting other people, other students, taking classes, frontal classes, and only part of the education can be replicated by doing it remotely. So I'm not saying 100% yes or no, but it's probably not the best option.
Yeah, so if I can chime in, yeah, we have historically required people to be here live in person for their coursework as well as any research work. I think the question might have also been about, I mean, we would certainly welcome students who wanted to be here in Davis for their coursework, but then were employed outside of campus. You know, you don't have to be working on research here on campus. But we think it's a good idea if you do. Like I said, it's an apprenticeship. So we want you working with researchers on campus to learn how research is done. But there have been times when students have had off-campus employment while being here for classes.
So we've kind of jumped into question and answers already, but I think I'm going to back up a bit and let Amy Lee present. She is a current TTP PhD candidate, and she's working with Dr. Susan Handy, and she is our current TTP student rep.
Sure, thank you. And I will actually chime in a little bit on that last question, because as a recovering overcommitted person, I can say a lot about trying to work at an off-campus kind of job while getting a PhD. I mean, if you want the horror version, email me and I'll let you know. But if that is the case, I would say, one, you would miss out on wonderful research opportunities that PhDs are really about. PhDs are less about the coursework, but they're also in equal parts about the research process, and you would miss out on those. And you would miss out on nights and weekends for approximately 6 years. So I would not recommend that. I tried it and I got burned out, so I had to let something go. Obviously, I'm here now, so you can see what I let go. But I'm happy to talk more. I did, while I was getting my master's degree in TTP, I did work at an agency job, and I'm happy to talk to folks about what that was like and how the lack of balance worked out for me. So I am here to talk about why I chose TTP. I kind of prepared some notes about that. So I'll give a little my 2 cents on that. I have 2 things that I really want to hit on. Why TTP and why UC Davis when there are so many Masters of Planning programs and engineering programs and all kinds of things that you could choose from. Why I chose TTP to get this kind of very unique type of degree was in one part because of the phenomenal faculty that are at UC Davis. I chose Davis in part. The faculty in the TTP program are not only experts in their fields, you will find experts in a lot of places, but you have phenomenal experts who are incredibly approachable and willing to really create that apprenticeship program to teach you how to gain the skills. It's not like they will send you out with a data set and tell you to clean it and come back in a couple months, but it's really a collaborative program. There are lots of open doors. There are lots of very friendly faculty who really open up the opportunities to not only the academy, but all of the research projects and graduate student researchships that are really part of the educational process and the educational curriculum, I'd say, of TTP. A note I just want to underscore is a lot of those, the GSR was what we call them, the research that you do, pays for your tuition and fees. So that one of the benefits, I guess, of being employed at the GSR is that it pays for your tuition and fees, which is a huge win for students. So the faculty, I came to Davis to work with Susan. I'll say that right out front. And then people are also the students that you get to work with. And I think that Davis has a really, especially ITS at Davis, has a very fun cohort of folks that you get to go through this process with. So I'll say that. I'm not going to bash suits elsewhere, but you can, I think Davis has a really phenomenal cohort of folks that you'll get to work with and who will be your colleagues and your coworkers for the next several decades as you work in this field. And then the other part of it is the work itself. And what I have really appreciated and really love about being an ITS student is the relevant research that I get to do. Lots of folks, when they heard that I was doing a PhD, they said, okay, see you, I came from an agency job and they said, we'll see you never because you're gonna be doing things that aren't important to us anymore. And that's really, I feel very proud that that has not been the case because there are so many relevant research projects that you can do that relate directly to policy and to industry and to agency decisions that are being made. They mentioned, we've talked about how Davis is just down the street from Sacramento, which is the capital of California. There are really, really strong ties between ITS and the California Air Resources Board, the Department of Transportation for the state, other special offices and state agencies like the Strategic Growth Council. I've met a lot of those folks who work there. I've made those connections, and some of our work has gone directly into kind of the rulemaking process or into guidelines that those agencies make. And that's a really great, for if you're interested in doing policy relevant research, Davis is a really great place to do that. It's not something that will sit in a journal and, not perhaps be peeked at again by folks outside of the academy. So yeah, those are my quick pitches for why I chose Davis. I'm happy to answer any questions about that, either live or feel free to shoot me an email.
Thanks, Amy. So this is the point in the agenda where we're going to have a question and answer period for all of the folks that are on the call right now. And those are the folks that have presented. So you have faculty and researchers. We have quite a few current students on the call as well, including Amy that you just heard from. And then we're going to allow about 10 minutes for question and answers. So these are general questions to answer the general audience. And then we're going to break into breakout rooms where our current students, several of our current students will host several breakout rooms where the prospective students will have a casual conversation with our current students. So if you have specific questions for students, you can do that in the breakout. But right now we'd like to take some time for you to ask your general questions of this audience. Again, you can put your questions in chat or you can unmute yourself and ask directly. Okay, someone has asked in the chat, would it be possible to take courses from other departments like environment department, computer science, etc.? Susan, that's probably for you.
Yes, absolutely. If you look at our curriculum, you will see lots of courses from other departments. TTP actually, in fact, offers a limited set of transportation specific classes, focusing on the core classes and some of the track classes. And then especially when you get into the skill areas, that's where you'll be focused a lot on other departments. It's a little complicated, but TTP is not its own department. It is a graduate program. So it is drawing faculty from other departments and from the research faculty at ITS. Yeah, so we don't offer a full slate of classes. We focus on those core classes. But in the skill areas, students often take, advanced level econometrics classes, statistics classes. A lot of students are doing machine learning sort of classes now. You can also go a more social sciencey direction and take classes in political science or psychology. Yeah, so there's a full, that's the kind of flexibility that I was referring to in my comments.
Thanks, Susan. Question, how many PhD students will be admitted in the fall? Gil, that's an admission question. You want to take that one?
We don't have a specific number that we admit every year. Actually, Anne-Marie, maybe can you say how many were admitted in the last couple of years? Kind of.
Yeah, it depends. It depends on the faculty match that Gil mentioned earlier. If you find a faculty member and a research project that the faculty steps up and says, I want to work with that student, that's what we're looking for. So it depends on how many faculty have openings in their research groups. I know students or prospective students ask me that frequently, and I don't know when their current students are graduating necessarily, because they could be working with students from other home departments as well, or when their money comes and goes. So it's up to the faculty to step up and say, we have usually between 10 to 15 students, and that's master's and PhD per year admitted.
And someone asked here about bachelor degree in psychology and a minor in geography. That sounds to me like a great fit, but I have to admit at the same time that there are very few, undergrad degrees that will not fit here. If you're interested in transportation, it's a very wide, field. We are not doing, for example, if you want to design the next battery, and you're coming from a chemistry background, and that's what you want to do, probably you will not find a good fit here. But almost anything else can fit with transportation. And psychology and geography or environmental planning sounds like a perfect fit to me.
Yeah, I agree completely. But I do want to point you to our prerequisites. So you want to check those out. Depending on what you did as an undergraduate, you may have some courses to take either before you get here or right when you get here. We encourage incoming students to take care of those prerequisites before they get here, just so that they can jump right in and take, the fun stuff. But maybe I'll let Anne-Marie review those just to make sure we get it right.
Sure. Again, this is on our application website. So we require a calculus course. Then we require an intermediate statistics course and an intermediate economics course. And as Susan said, you don't have to have those completed to be admitted, but we do recommend that you finish those up as quickly as possible once you get here, because you will be taking those with other undergraduates, and that is not the graduate experience that you want, but it is required to have that knowledge to do well in your graduate level classes.
And to reiterate what Gil was saying, this is not an engineering program, but it is a quantitatively oriented program, which isn't to say you can't do qualitative research. We certainly have plenty of students and faculty who do qualitative research, but you will be expected to do some amount of quantitative work along the way, at least in your courses.
There's a question here, what careers beyond academia have PhD graduates gone on to pursue?
Well, it's all over the place. So we do have quite a few students who go on to academia, either faculty positions where they're teaching and doing research, or research specific positions. Quite a few of our students end up staying here and continuing on to do research, like Dr. Tal. But then we have students end up in all kinds of places, industry of various sorts. A couple of students I've worked with recently, one is now doing research at Lime, as in scooters. Another one's at Google, again, doing, using his research skills there, doing survey sort of work. I think I'll let Gil or Dan say a little more about some of where students from the more vehicle part of things have gone.
There's some that have gone to, there's one at Shell Oil Company. There's some at the car companies. It's really, and of course, government agencies, the California Air Resources Board and many others. And I would note many, if not most of these rise very fast in the organizations to very senior levels in a very short amount of time. So I think, and all of them, I think, would say that the PhD was really valuable to them, not only in terms of what they learn, but in terms of all the expertise they gained, and it gives them a leg up within the organization also.
Yeah, I think non-governmental organizations, think
Yeah.
tanks, it's another place students have gone.
Yeah.
I almost can promise you that we don't have, yeah, I can promise we don't have any unemployed out of our graduate students. I never heard of one of those.
Moving on to a curriculum question. Is it possible to apply your master's coursework toward the PhD course requirements? If so, what would be the best way to know how much coursework you get credit for?
Well, that's easy. You talk to Anne Marie. But yes, yeah, if there's a good alignment between what you've done as a master's student and one of the courses we require, you may be able to sort of place out of that course. You will still have the total units requirement, but I'll let Anne Marie finish because I probably will get it wrong.
Yes, so getting into the weeds, you need 54 units of coursework to get a PhD in TTP, and you can transfer 27 of those from another university's master's program. But we need to get into specifics of your transcripts to see if those are transferable.
So to clarify, Anne-Marie, maybe I had it wrong. So if they transfer some credits, then they don't have to take 54 credits here.
Yeah, you had it right, Susan. Maybe I said it wrong. Exactly. 54 total credits. Some of those can be from another university, and you'll transfer those into the 54.
Okay, great. That's not what I said.
Oh,
that makes it sound like you're like halfway there, though. Obviously, that doesn't count the research and thesis part of things.
Right,
So,
coursework. That's just the coursework, not the dissertation research, which is the big part. Thanks, Scott.
So maybe I'll just add here that kind of the timeline, because you may be interested in that. Typically, master's students are here for 2 years. We've got both a thesis option and an exam option. And then for PhD students, it is about 2 years of coursework, after which you take your qualifying exam, which is an oral exam that is a defense of your dissertation proposal, as well as some questioning about your coursework. And then once you pass your qualifying exam, it's your dissertation. And I would say, well, there's a lot of variation in how long it takes students to finish, but 2 years would be kind of the expectation. So a 4-year program for the PhD.
Here's another one. Do you need a research background for bachelor students who are applying for a PhD program? Is it possible to be admitted without prior research background, but with a strong academic record?
Well, typically students come in for a master's and then finish that up and convert to a PhD student. But I guess there is technically a way to come straight into the PhD, Anne-Marie.
Correct.
But we don't do that very often. Yeah.
Correct.
There is, but also you can come in for a master's and a year into the program, have an advisor and together decide to transfer, and it's pretty common. So don't feel that if you decided on a master's, you have to finish it and you can never transfer. We have quite a lot of students that start and transfer.
Yeah, but with the exam option for the master's, you might as well get a master's along the way. It's not that hard to do. And then once you've done that, your additional coursework is not so extensive for the PhD. So I can't think of anybody who's done just a PhD without a master's.
No, we have a couple of students.
Oh, we do? Okay.
Yeah. And that kind of leads to the next question. Can I apply for both the master's and the PhD program, and will I be evaluated separately for both? You can apply to both. I would not recommend it. You have to pay 2 application fees and complete 2 separate applications. So not a good idea. I'd recommend that you talk with Gil, talk with me, or talk with Susan to better understand your situation and see if you're a stronger master's applicant or a stronger PhD, and then you can focus your application on the 1 degree.
Yeah, and in the past, we had people who apply for a PhD, for example, and we contact them and said, We can admit you for a master's if you would like, and admit someone to a master's later. But it probably would be nice if you talk with us ahead of time and adjust expectations.
Is it possible to deliver the English language certificate after the application? No. We need that your English language requirement fulfilled as part of your recommendation or part of your application. In fact, all of the application has to be here in your online application before I can check it complete and then forward it to the admissions committee. So we do need that English language requirement test. Now, knowing that it's tougher in COVID, if you look at the exams that are acceptable, we have opened those up this year for the international students. So hopefully one of those listed on our application website is available to you. And speaking of exams, how is the GRE considered for the fall application for 2021? It is not considered. It is not required this year. We knew that was a barrier for some students in the current world. So we have waived that requirement. Now, some students have emailed me asking, but I already took it. Can I just send it anyway? And the answer is no. We have to look at the applications equitably. And since some people will not be taking the exam and submitting it, we cannot accept it from anyone else. In fact, the online application will not let you upload your scores. What is the deadline for submitting? January 15th. Let's say it again, January 15th. Thank you, Ray, for adding that into the chat. We strongly recommend you complete that application by January 15th, because that is when our admissions committee will start reviewing and making matches with faculty and reviewing our financial offers as well. There is the April 1st deadline, which is a general deadline, and then June 1st is if we have space deadline. Any other questions for this general audience before we break into breakout rooms?
There are plenty more questions that probably we should take. Try to get answered in the breakout room or just email us directly and we will be happy to answer, just for the sake of time.
I do want to address the question about letters of rec. Does it need to be uploaded by January as well?
Yeah, good one.
Yeah, because I say this all the time. The letters in rec, your 3 letters of recommendation are the hardest part of your application to complete because it's outside of your control. You put in an email address and you're just waiting for that professor or employer or recommender to complete that. So ask them early and ask them that they can meet the deadline and ask them that they will give you a positive recommendation and tell them what you'd like to stress. So take control of your letters of rec. They do need to be in. Again, all 3 letters need to be completed before I can check application complete and forward it on to the admissions committee. So work with your recommenders. If someone is struggling or delayed in getting that letter in for you, you have the ability to go into the application and take out their email address and put in another. And you have the ability to see when they have submitted that letter. There are some other questions that are pretty specific to certain applicants. Just email me or review our website and I'll be happy to answer those. Since it is 2 o'clock and we're supposed to end, I'd like you to go into breakout rooms with our current students, and we'll allow about 10 minutes of breakout questions, and then we can come back. I'll be here and see if there's any last minute things that we can. So Natalie, if you could break people out.
All right, everyone will receive a pop-up window asking you to join a breakout. So just hit admit when that pops up, and then that should take you to your room.
Yeah, thank you for joining us.
Is this just students or faculty as well?
Just for students, yeah.
Okay.
Students.
That way they get honest answers.
I'm honest. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Yeah, thank you.
Contact us if you have any questions about research projects and opportunities to work with us.